government, we want to defend why we should think there should be group punishment and reward in schools. By schools, we mean from primary school till the end of high school. And by punishment or reward, we want to remind that the objective of this punishment or reward is to learn, because the objective of education is to train a person and teach them, for them to be prepared and have the tools to deal with the real world when they don't have the structural support that schools gives them, right? And so the objective of punishment and reward, as I said, is to teach. And the way these punishments and rewards are going to be is, the reward probably will be something very mundane, like a fun class, or I don't know, taking them to a school trip, or maybe a candy. Depends what they do, and also depends on the teacher. And the punishment is going to also have the objective of, I'm going to take PIs in the minute number 5, but the objective of this punishment is going to be, again, this learning. We're not talking about brutal punishment or something very harsh. We want something that will promote unity, like teamwork, like cleaning together, and something that will have the objective to rebuild and really work on the action specific to punishment that caused that punishment.
Clarification.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of punishments like that?
Yeah. So, for example, if there was a food fight in the class, and a group of kids throw food at another kid, one of the punishment will be clean together. We will explain what that will also promote unity, but it will also, and also another punishment can be to make a project about the lack of food in the world, for them to also have this reflection, right? So you have a more rounded, consequence with the objective of, again, learning. That it's the objective of education and preparing people for the consequence in the real world. And so our main 2 points are going to be that, first of all, this mimics the real world, and we are going to relate that to the parts of blame and social pressure, and also this reflection and this personal analysis that will really help them understand where they are in the situation, right? Because when we're in the real world and we belong to a group, we need to find ourselves in the situation. What did I do? Why did I didn't do? And what are the consequences of this? And how am I affected? And the other part is that, again, it promotes unity. So I'm going to start with my first point, that it mimics the real world. And so I just want to make a clarification. The big difference that we see, and the big advantage of giving the consequences in a group and not individually, is that when you give a consequences to an individual, only he has the motivation to understand and reflect on what he did. It's very easy to be a bystander and an observer, right? But when you give the consequences to a group, you really need to motivate people to reflect, because there is this lack of understanding of what did I do, what did I didn't do, especially when you're a kid, right? And you need to see, maybe I didn't do anything, but I belong to this group and I belong to this class, and the consequences affect me, and therefore I need to be aware of this, right? And it's not an effect that will happen if you only punish or reward one of these. Also, a reward, in the case of reward, is a case of appreciation. What did he do? How did it affect me positively? How can I do it also to him, because a lot of times as humans we want to reciprocate, but sorry. Okay, so and it also helps me find myself in the social map of the group, that later on when I go to society, I again find myself in these situations when I need to see where am I standing, to see how do I behave, to understand the situation, what are the consequences, and that has to do with 2 things. First of all, the social pressure, right? So when I have the understanding of this is how things should be and shouldn't be, and this is how I am affected and I affect, I will take you in a minute. So how am I affected and how I affect, I can more easily, I can apply this social pressure to the person that did something, or understand other social pressure to behave in a certain way. And this mimics it. When I punish or reward the whole group, there is a social pressure or social appreciation by the person who did it. And so if that person, there is nobody to supervise next time, or there is, or the person is not strong morally, he knows that the group will suffer about his consequence, or will be rewarded. And that will be, for the next time, a motivation, and also for that time, and also a learning experience for others to do or to not to do something. And in the cases of, I am going to take you because
so say other people didn't act, like drink alcohol, and the entire class is punished for them. Why do I internalize that the act, i.e. drinking alcohol, is wrong, instead of internalizing that I ought to just avoid punishment regardless of the act?
Because of the kind of punishment. If I used to punish you and tell you, all of you sit in a classroom and think, I'm not giving you any objective to think about, right? But because the definition that we have given you of punishment, that is that the punishment have an objective for you to reflect and to learn. If I punish you by making you sit in a class and researching the effects of alcohol and how it damages me and others, I will have a guidance to the understanding of, first of all, what I commented earlier, when am I standing in a society and what are the consequences for me and for others. I will have a motivation to act differently, and therefore it won't lead me to anger, right? And I will also have maybe I would develop in a certain way a kind of resentment to the person that is punishing me, but I will have the unity that all of us are doing this together, and I will have the understanding of why this is happening to me. Okay, and the other point that I was going to say, but my parents are going to touch on that, is why this promotes unity and in a group. It also has to do with the consequence, but he's going to talk more about that. And I just want to do a quick summary of what we talked about. What I mentioned was that this mimics the real world. I explained why this mimics the social pressure of the real world, and also the impartition of blame that will, when prepared the kids that with the objective of achieving the objective of education, that is preparing the people from the real world, in order for them to be able to maintain laws and morals in the long run. Thank you very much.
Starting in 3, 2, 1. Firstly, one piece of framing. We're not talking so much about collective rewards. Why is this the case? 2 reasons. Firstly, reality check. I want to ask you, panel, when did you get the collective reward? I didn't. I got a collective punishment, but not collective reward. And the structural reasons for that is that giving a collective reward is something that is nice to have. This is not something that a teacher has to do, so it doesn't have an incentive to do that. But giving a collective punishment is much easier. It is something that a teacher wants and needs to give a punishment anyways, and it is much harder and it is much more like time-consuming to give an individual punishment instead of a collective punishment, and so teachers are doing that much more. And so we think just the prominent case in this debate is punishment and not rewards. After that, let's go and understand 2 main points. The first is why it makes discipline violations much worse, and the second point is why it harms the ability of teachers to teach the kids a lesson with the punishment. So firstly, why does it make discipline violations much worse in the schools where it happens? Now listen, I got a collective punishment. Some kids drank alcohol at the beginning of the year, and then our trip to Eilat got cancelled. What actually happened in the world? We have 3 populations of kids here. We have the people that are the ones that are actually committing the crime. Then we have the big majority that are just not doing something against it, and then we have the good kids that are maybe trying to do something against that, but are getting the punishment anyways. So, about the kids that actually did something bad, we think that those kids are the ones that are actually the ones that need to get the punishment, but in our world they don't understand what they did wrong. Why? Because they see this punishment and it looks that big. Everyone is suffering by that, even their fellow friends. We think that it's not like they would say, oh no, I did something so wrong, I deserve, and everyone deserves to get punishment. They think, okay, this punishment is just unproportional, just not fair. We don't understand why this is the case. It makes it much more easier for them to justify for their friends why they did this thing from the first place, because they didn't think it will get so much a problem for all of them. They didn't think everyone will be so mad at them and things like that. And it creates a cognitive dissonance, because they feel like they are getting a much harsher punishment than what they actually need to get. We think that it doesn't give the good effect of deterrence, because children are not thinking rationally. Rather, they understand that this is not something that's fair, this is not okay, and they feel more resentment for their teachers. They feel like the teachers that does them wrong and everyone wrong, and then we think that this punishment is just not effective because the kids don't understand what they did wrong. They just think that the punishment was unproportional, and they don't see that as something that resembles the real life, because in real life you get proportional punishment. They just think that the teachers are bad, and then they just are much worse students, much worse like people to teach because of that, because they become much more violent, because they don't understand the logic behind the system. They think their teachers don't understand them, and so they will be just much worse. But let's talk about the big majority. We think that for big majority, having collective punishment is actually not that bad, right? When my trip got cancelled, we just had a party instead, okay? We think that kids, when everyone experiences the same thing, it's like being stuck in the bullshit of the army together. You become more like together. It becomes an experience, maybe not a good experience, but this is something that overall gets you more unified. We think that this unification is from experiencing the punishment, and so we think for the overwhelming majority, they don't see that as a bad thing necessarily, but rather see that as something that is a unifying experience, just happened, and they are unified against the teachers that made them experience this, but not against the people that actually done the wrong things or things like that. Why do we think is the effect on the good kids that maybe try to warn and things like that? We think that they are still punished because of this punishment. They still suffer the consequences of things they try to warn against and do things against. And so we think those kids get a disincentive to do things that are good in the future, because they will be punished anyway. So why does it matter? Why to try stop the, I don't know, bad things that kids are doing if at the end they will get the punishment anyway? We think because of that we are just not being able to stop many of the problems that kids are doing, because we don't have this group of kids that are actually doing good things, actually trying to help and stop bad things from happening. And so we think on 3 levels the reality is getting worse. Firstly, the kid that's actually done the punishment become more resentful, more violent and things like that. The overwhelming majority doesn't see drinking alcohol as a problem, but rather than a kind of fun experience, and the kids that could have stopped this are not the ones that are being punished, and so they lose motivation to stop it in the future, leading to more not disciplinary things. Before I continue, I'd like a POI from clothing.
Yes. Do you really think that if I feel the punishment I got is not harsh and proportionate, it will really stop me from doing the same thing in the future?
We don't think that the overwhelming majority of kids see that as something that is hard when they all experience this together. Notice, I would not give a Holocaust example, but kids in very hard situations have succeeded to find good things, succeeded to find things that brings them joy, and we think that having this as an experience for all of us is something that is very unifying and good for them. Okay, let's understand why it hurts the ability of teachers to teach the kids what is wrong and right. Firstly, what happened to a teacher that gives a collective punishment? We think that kids see that as unfair. Whether they are affected by it very much or not, they just think this is not their fault. And so we think they are angry on the teacher. They think that the teacher done something that is irrational, and so they see the teacher as someone that can teach them less in the future. This means that in education class in the future, when the teacher tells them about, I don't know, sex education and things like that, they will listen less, they will internalize less, because they see the teacher as someone that is not like them, not trying to speak their language. In the comparative, the teacher goes and talks to one specific student that is a problem. He talks to them eye to eye, tells them what is the problem. This student can actually go through an educational process and understand what was the problem, what was the effect. But right now, the one that is to blame is the teacher and not the student that has done the punishment, because the teacher is seen as the one doing the irrational things. And so we are losing the potential of actually teaching the children for the long term that there is their actions are not okay inherently because of what they've done, and not because of some consequence that are happening to everyone. If I drink alcohol, it is not okay because it is not okay for me, because it hurts me, not because it will maybe stop my class from going to a lab. We think this is the message that kids have to learn, and we think we are harming that in the debate. We go into a pause.
Okay, just to recap the first comment of position, we do think that collective rewards is an emotion and is relevant. Think of class sports days. Think of football tournaments. Think of actions you have, for example, partying as a class. These things are relevant and are still potential rewards we can have for students. We think they're really relevant, they're really easy to hand out, it can be grades. Like there's many ways to actually have collective rewards which are beneficial to students, which we think are really relevant and not sure why they would be included. Now, next up. I'll address like the first point, that is that repeated ones will be worse. Now, there's 2 points of it. The main point that we got is that the kids will see the collective punishment as like unfair and like heavy-handed, essentially not proportional to the actual offense cost. Now, the thing is, if you're talking about the group of students who are the actual offenders, we do think in this case it was rather symmetrical. Like they're not going to see what they're doing as essentially. We don't think that in either case the problem will be addressed fairly. We think. Sorry. That's not what I wanted to say. Sorry. The main cause we get there is that overall the thing that will be built up is essentially resentment towards the teachers, and essentially either we get both unification of the class, which we think is a positive thing, we will like class be unified, and second thing is resentment towards teachers, which will decrease of their ability to actually educate students. Now, we think that there's a problem there because currently, like in status quo, there isn't respect towards teachers. I'm sorry, like this doesn't exist. I don't think that right now, just because your teacher refused to take the class out to a trip, is what's going to make you lose the respect like towards their teaching ability. We think that like there isn't really an impact we get there, and it's missing. Now, for our main case, why students will be more engaged in school activities. And we're talking about like day-to-day school, not count as like school trips, not like any special activities. We're talking about day-to-day how a class functions. Now, I'll just still open like positions classification into like 3 parts, like the offenders or like the best students, the majority, and the good kids who are trying to study super hard. Now, the thing is, right now, as Prime Minister has said, there isn't really any incentive to pay attention to what other students are doing. Right now, like, you basically have no investment. You don't care like how good a student is. You don't care about grades right now. What we want is that not only you will have your own grades to care about, you'll actually care more about what the rest of the class thinks of you. Because now, what you're going to have now is that if the class is evaluated as a whole, other students will pay more attention to what you say. Suddenly, what you say doesn't just mean that you don't know the material, it means that everyone else has an investment in you performing well. What that means is, because, like minutes 5 or something. So, what we'll get is actually, first of all, we get students paying attention to each other, which currently we don't really get. But the thing is, when someone is performing not well, there's going to be like 200 reasons students do that. First of all, teachers being unfair, like they're not doing their job, etc., etc. We think it's like good balance is jealous, like we think that's a thing. The second thing is saying, oh, this student is performing not very well. Now, the thing is, if we we'd like to see the classroom as a group. They see themselves as essentially part of a group, and because their own evaluation is depending on essentially how well what performing student is doing, they're going to have more of an incentive to go and like help them when they're struggling. They're going to have like the top students now, instead of just being pissed that there's the misbehaving kids that are just the whole class are just goofing off, and now they can actually like have a reason to talk about it. And maybe what is not going to help misbehaving kids, if they don't care about grades and status quo, we can't really change their mind unless like they get an external talking to. The thing is, what kids really care about is social pressure. When the whole class is like staring at them, you can do this, please don't fuck this up. Now you're gonna have they actually, because that is what they're experiencing in their day-to-day life, they will actually either have to essentially now feel better in order to essentially being part of it. Not to mention that they get to enjoy all the benefits of being part of that honor student. We're going to take closing.
If the panel starts fighting right now, do you think it's fair to blame me for the fact that the panel hit each other?
I think in this case the panel would be more like the educator. If the educator it would be like the teacher. And in this case, like we're the students, like the debaters are the students, and the panel is the teacher. I don't think like a very good example, but let's say, let's think of the strong side and say like, okay, there were a bunch of misbehaving kids. In this case, yeah, we do think it's fair because it will result in more effective experience for the class and long term. That is the case because, first of all, now you have some responsibility. Like each student has their own responsibility to make sure their fellow students behave better. So essentially, you didn't like do nothing. You actively stood from the side. Passive on the side, but now you have more responsibility there, which we think is a good thing. They will carry towards forward as part of society, because that is how we usually perform. I'll make it real quick. Essentially, once you give students an incentive to make sure that the fellow students are performing well, or at least sucking up, students will take more pleasure in the top students performing well. They'll also get to benefit from having more friends to talk with us about, and in general, it will result in students being more engaged in talk students. Thank you.
One. Principle and then practical. Before that, I would like to note an OG. OG can't just say this is the type of punishment we support, because this House supports motion as per current manual require you to defend how it actually looks like in reality. So let's talk for a second how it actually looks like in reality. Note, OG's type of punishment was a lot of supervision from the teacher on each kid in class. They need to know that every single kid in class actually works together, promotes unity, that they actually understand the reason for the punishment, that they actually learn from it and stuff like that. No, it is supervising an entire class of like 35 students is really hard. You know when the type of punishment is actually likely when you're doing so for a couple of individuals, like one individual, two individuals. That's when you can actually supervise them, know if they learn. Not when you have 35 kids and you need to notice that they're all not slacking off or doing anything weird. In reality, the type when collective punishment is used when the teacher is overworked, when they are angry, when they are stressed, when they can't supervise the class. You just need a quick way in order to like push down a punishment to punish them, and so the children will know it's hard and stop misbehaving. No, this is reality, especially when most people, like the parents of the students and stuff like that, would probably critique it. So it's only done when the teacher is really on the last leg, and it's usually harsh. The examples that Yael give are far more correct than the examples that OG give that never happen. In reality, we're still going to manage in the best case, but still very important to know. Same thing about rewards. Know that rewards take time, take your effort. When I do pizza party, I need to get like money from nowhere. When I exempt children from class or give them good grades, they're going to listen less later, and I need to put in more effort to teach later. Very unlikely to happen. Now, on principle, note here, very, very, very important. Number one, side government can't get away from the fact that they're punishing innocent individuals. Even if they run collective guilt, sometimes you literally just can't control what is happening. Like not every children has control over the entire class, and when the entire class does something stupid, I decide to drink alcohol, I as the children don't have anything about it. Therefore, OG and CG necessarily support defending innocent. Second of all, punishment isn't absolute. There are punishments that are cruel and unjust that we would never like to punish. In tuition papier, we don't want to torture people for even if it's effective. We don't want to overly punish people if it's effective. Effectiveness isn't a metric by itself. Why is this punishment principally ineffective? Number one, because children didn't consent to being in school. They were literally forced into school by the state, on the power of the state. They were literally forced to associate with some children. Innocent children never had the choice to receive or not receive the punishment. This means that they're inherently punished despite the fact that they oftentimes literally had zero choice in the act. This is simply by itself cruel and unjust. Just punishing the intuition pump, it's equivalent to just taking someone from the street and punishing them on nothing. Second of all, simply because child innocence, i.e. the fact that children deserve extra special protections and we don't punish them oftentimes or try to be just than them. Note that the likely characterization here means that this is punishment for the sake of punishing that the children will be quiet. We think that it is inherently unprincipled to do for children to ruin their innocence and expose them to like harsh reality where shit like this happens very bad by itself. And lastly, it's dehumanizing. when I punish an innocent person, I don't actually treat them as their own person, with their own agency, their own thought, their own will. I simply just treat them as a tool, as someone to be conditioned outside and to act good, instead of treating them as someone who actually makes decisions as a human. I treat them as a tool and not as a human being. This by itself is terrible. Note why this argument is important. Governments have a double burden on them, i.e. a punishment which isn't effective is by itself illegitimate, right? Which is punishing someone for no reason by itself. But also, a punishment which is illegitimate, well, it's deontologically illegitimate, so we can't support it. This means that government is supposed to be legitimate and effective. We just need to interview on one clash. This is already enough analysis as to why this is illegitimate. Before I move on to practical, CG, do you have an extension?
Yes, the world outside school is not fair, and innocent people do get punished. So we are trying to make this as a group force to make you understand that you are always a part of a group.
I mean, you're likely to understand it relatively quickly when you come to reality. I'm not sure why this has such a large delta, especially when, TV, movies, probably your parents probably learned quite quickly. I'm not sure why this is the exact thing Europe wants to learn. Here's what you actually learn from the punishment. First of all, how you're going to react to it. Note here that even under government best case, where it's the education or punishment that teachers supervise you, you are still likely to be mad and not internalize it. Two reasons why. Number one, because you still view yourself as innocent. Even if I don't know, collective guilt or some shit like that, you don't actually believe that in reality. I didn't drink alcohol, they drank alcohol, why is it my fault? Why am I learning this? I had no clue under that. Secondly, OG's social pressure analysis. Note here, the social pressure, children aren't intelligent, right? What they're talking about is bullying, children forcing each other and being strong in each other. And bullying is inherently asymmetric, as in stronger children, the kings of the cast, the people who are connected, will receive less social pressure than the weaker children who have been tangentially connected. Because you aren't going to fuck over with the stronger children in the class, you aren't going to put yourself up to retribution and socially pressure them, so you as children learn that it's essentially nothing about the punishment, that weaker children who think tangentially in the crime get a lot more punishment and a lot more social pressure than the stronger children, that this is inherently asymmetric and just based around your social strength and not actually based around what you did right or wrong. Why is this crucial? Because it means that you just internalize not actually any internal moral system on whether or not this punishment is good or bad and what you should inherently do, which note is the comparative when teachers are far more likely to individually supervise you because it's far easier for them to do because it takes them less effort and they're less overworked. You just internalize that you don't want to get punished, that you want to be socially powerful, that you want to evade punishment because this is what is important, evading the punishment because you just get there, because you don't actually have any fairness or internal or moral system which tell you what's good or bad, just you suffer a bad thing you don't want to get. And this is crucial because no, when children are supervised and when they get fucked for innocent punishments, they're likely to try to do the same thing anyways, right? They'll try to not be punishment when they're supervised, when they actually get punishment and pressure people. The unique thing is, in reality, people oftentimes aren't supervised. CEOs, politicians, just normal tax evaders and criminals on the street, right? A lot of people are unsupervised and can do corruption. Uniquely here, when we hamper this through teaching them that they just need to avoid punishment, then not teaching them an internal moral system through direct education, we let people who are unsupervised be more willing to do crime. Because they're unsupervised, they aren't going to be caught and they aren't going to suffer from it, and the benefits are very, very, very direct. On our side, we actually train them to have an external moral system and not be punished. This is number one, because already beating OG because of the asymmetry here. They're likely, on their cases, to not be punished on that. Second of all, Yael already explains to you that this punishment is likely to be ineffective, because even if you are mad at the teacher and think it's ineffective, you have the ability to band together, to do parties instead for that, to get your parents into play, tell them it's very unfair, and get a lot of parents to force the teacher or to act on it in many different cases. This means that you both not actually learn any internal moral system, and also the punishment just doesn't work on you oftentimes to the extent that it's supposed to work. Note these aren't contradicting, I just mean you can both claim that it's ineffective, and if it would have been effective, it would have been wrong. This by itself kills OG, because again, the comparative of individually supervising a person actually teaches, actually forces them to learn, and all of that, well, they're ineffective. And last point, which is also important, it's the fact that it actively harms good education. As in, the children who have actively tried to do so and tried to solve the problem are still punished, and they also get, and also the rest of the class is mad for them for trying to stop that. You actively learn that you shouldn't do good, that you shouldn't social pressure, that you shouldn't do that. This flips OG, because social pressure, considering the fact that kids are still kids and are oftentimes going to punish, seems ineffective to you at the point to which you try it and you still fail and still get collectively punished. This means that they're actually far less likely to do social pressure on their side, plus Yael's point on the children that need more care instead that get bullied and actually don't learn to perform better. All of these should probably mean that
Okay, so first rebuttal to OO. They're saying to us that you're not messaging that the act of drinking alcohol is wrong. You're making the students to just try and avoid punishment. So first of all, this is exactly the opposite. When you give a more harsh punishment for something, the understanding that this something is probably pretty serious it becomes more stronger. But even if the student will not realize the harm in what he's doing, I don't care. I care much more about him not doing it again, and I'm fine with the possibility of him not hitting other students or not drinking alcohol without fully understanding why it's bad. All the other rebuttals for oral will be integrated in my case. So I'm going to have one major case talking about deepening the characterization that we got from opening up about this is the world outside and the artificial chalukah between me and them. So what's it like today? We have an individual punishment. This is not really deterring students from anything. As I said to OO, if I get a punishment that I feel is proportionate and not too harsh, it's not really a punishment. It's a trade-off. It's a deal that I can choose to make every time, and to make the deal inside my head, do I want to pay this price or do I not want to pay this price? This is not a punishment. This is something that I can choose to do every time from the beginning. It's in no way will scare me off enough to not do it next time. I will take POI in 5 minutes. It will not scare me off enough to not do it next time once and for all. So the between collective and individual punishment is not real in any way. This is, for example, the reason why companies outside school are giving their employees like options, because when you succeed, the whole company succeeds, and your coworkers succeed with you. When you fail, your company fails, and your worker are also lose. So this is exactly a collective prize and a collective punishment that Yael talked about in the beginning when she said that none of us ever got a collective prize. This is it. For example, when a student comes late into class, he's not the only one losing something from it. The whole class suffers from it. They lose time, they lose attention. Anytime a student does something, even if it hits another student like on the hall in the school, everybody suffers from it. Anyway, it's always a collective something. So what the school is trying to do now by individual punishments is just trying to artificially portray a just world in school where everyone just is responsible for the consequences of their actions and their actions alone. This is not the way it is outside. What the school can do, instead of artificially portraying this world, is to make people understand how their actions will always affect other people, for good and for bad. They are always a part of a group. Moreover, OO told us that most of this, well, not most, but a lot of these things, students are with one another when this thing we want to prevent happens. When they're drinking alcohol, there are no teachers there. When they're going out with their friends, there are no teachers there. We need their peers, we need their friends, we need other students to be there and feel responsible for their actions. Also, in 5 minutes. We want the students to be, to keep in their mind, the same as OG said, do not be passive in those situations. We want them to take action and understand that if someone drinks alcohol, it will eventually affect me, and I don't care if it's because we're getting a punishment or because they truly understand the dangers of alcohol. Yes, opening?
Repeated offenses will likely cause that the repeated individual punishments will get harsher and harsher until they actually deter you. However, when you won't be caught, this policy actually incentivizes you to not care instead of individual punishments, which issue internal morality and thus always are deterred.
So I believe that I care much more about other people and what other people will say about me than I care about some kind of punishment that only I will pay. I don't believe that the collective punishments and the collective rewards will get more and more harsh over time. I don't. I believe that these punishments and these rewards are already harsh and effective as it is, and it will just be that. Because why are they so effective? Because I'm not just getting punishment, I'm getting all the maybe anger or maybe frustration or maybe disappointment of my friends. I see that it caused harm to my friends. I don't believe it needs to get much more harsh than that. 1 second. Okay. So I said that in collective price or punishment, there are also like lateral punishments and lateral prices that, like my friends being mad at me, and etc. etc. What else is it gives? Oh, we got from OO that collective punishment is just much easier for the teachers to give, and we fully agree with that. And this is exactly our point. If one student makes does something bad that we don't want him to do, probably there are other students doing the same thing as well. most of the time, it's not just one student being late to class. It's not just one student bullying other students. It's not just one student drinking alcohol. Probably there are other students who do that as well. And when I give this collective punishment, I actually engage all the other students in my class in a much more effective educational way as a teacher. This will have major consequences for the whole educational system and the teachers as well. What we're doing is we're giving the teachers a much more effective way to use in their arsenal of education that they don't have now. The work that the teacher has to face in the classroom, where he can get control over their students, is so harsh. I think we can all understand and we can all relate to what a hard job it is to be a teacher in a class where you can't get control over your students and where your students just don't care about what you say and are not afraid of anything. When I will get this collective punishment as we got from OO, I will not hate the teacher for giving the whole class this collective punishment because of me. No, I will feel ashamed inside of me internally because I see the consequences of what I did, and I understand that probably what I did is not just a trade-off to agree to pay a price. I understand that my actions actually affected the whole group I'm in, and next time I will probably not do it. So. And this makes the possibility of me repeating my act much less probable. It gives the, summarizing, it makes the act of me doing this deed much less probable. It gives the teacher a brand new, effective way to get control over the class, and it much better represents the world outside, which doesn't have this afadam between individual and collective punishments and rewards. Thank you.
Main point is how not individual and specific selected punishment isn't effective in teaching children and changing their behavior, either a lot, and neither is also rewards, which we also talk about because it's apart from the motion specifically said. And secondly, how it creates unresponsible and unstable, emotional stable adults later on. But first of all, some remarks. First of all, it was said that as a child, when you do something bad, you don't understand how it affects other people, and that's why you need corrective punishment. This is just not true because when a kid hits his friend and steals the ball, he understands what he has his friends and the people around him. Meaning two things. First of all, you don't need collective punishment because the act by itself is valid and you understand how it affects others. So for a lot of the other things that we want to prevent, we don't need collective punishment. And secondly, it means that second government just believes that you need to explain better to the students what they did wrong instead of collective punishment. You need to do more feeling rewards and punishments which are connect better to the crime, and this is exactly what we're going to talk about. So first, second government doesn't even believe itself when it tries to explain why you need collective punishment. Secondly, is that by both governments, is that shame is somehow a great way to teach kids things. And on instead of just you can post notes all over the school that someone did bad thing and is a loser. And of course, it's really ridiculous because social pressure is not a way, and humiliation is not a way to teach children things. It's not helpful. It's just great bad things. So this is what okay. To my first point about the effective of a carefully selected and personally reward and punishment. Teaching children is a journey. It's not something that is made by major points in your life of being really good or being really bad. It's ups and downs. It's really creating and paving the way for them. And in that way, different people react different to different stimulations. Okay, a bad kid can be bad because of a lot of stuff. It can have something at home. It can try to get attention from the teachers. He try to be cool. Maybe he has ADHD. Maybe it's just annoying. But all of these options need different rewards and different punishments. If I have something bad at home, maybe I don't want to punish because of the parents. I want to give them the tools to deal with his anger. Maybe if somebody wants to be cool, I need to explain to him why it's not cool to be bullying your friends. If he's trying to get attention, give him attention by good things. But all of those things can be achieved when you try to do collective punishments. It can be individuality for the person, and it can create just more chaos, as has been explained before. So it doesn't achieve the idea, and we've explained how shame is not a good tool anytime. It's just not an effective punishment. My second point is how it creates unemotional and unresponsible adults. And this happens when you have no connection and you can't convey the connection between the act and the lesson that you try to convey. Some situations, yes, maybe everybody can understand and see the correlation, but if the way you act in the daily life doesn't affect the punishment or reward you get, then you get an avoidant and unstable reaction by your caregiver, which is right now, and for most of the day, your teacher. What does that mean? An important thing to say is it doesn't only affect the bad guys, children, and the good children, but also the mediocre and normal children. Because if they are sometimes a little bad and a little good, but the results we get in the punishment we get is totally unrelated to the action, but to the other, then it means that we don't get love and affection in a reasonable way, which we can create. And we see that with children, it's called an avoidant attachment style, which create people who can't connect to others. So we have problems with relationships, in romantic relationships and everyday life, and it creates instability in the way they understand and feel their environment, and all that. They don't have a reason to act good or not good because they don't feel that the action matters. So if they can be a really bad student and nothing will happen, they can always blame, I'm sorry, if you can be like, not like a terrible thing but will give you a punishment, but will just not as good and not as far to be good, and yet you get rewards when you just won't try to be a better student because you get rewards anyway. If you always get, if you always act okay, and then you have to write a paper about how write a paper because you didn't do anything and you still got the punishment, that means that you don't there is no point of acting good and being responsible and trying. Yeah, it's last choices.
I think boys the results in that they be better prepared for life because life is unfair, multiple authority how it is it's the norm.
Okay, we don't think life trying to be unfair intentionally. Life unfair because it's unfair, and we can have a lot of other situations to learn that. Lives are unfair even as a child. It's some things you don't understand, a lot of things you don't understand. But it's really different when saying the people who are responsible to you, the people who are supposed to give you everything you need, that care for you, that should make your life better, acting randomly with you without really appreciating you, without really seeing you. And we think that it's really bad thing. We think that later on, it's not going to be, oh, life is something random happens like a random. We think it's going to result in the government is a lie, okay? We can't trust anything. This is a radical way, yes. But my point is that you don't believe authority figures and you can't have a stable, emotional, and part of society life, which it's really important thing to notice. It's also your mental position right now, but it's also you as an adult in the future, and this is affect all students. Bad, mediocre, good. It happens when you get reward, and it happens when you get punishment. So please oppose.
Okay, shall I explain to you how in real life your actions have consequences on others, and therefore this kind of punishment reflects what happens in real life, and therefore it's very important for the kids to learn it at a young age. So I'm going to go over each group and explain our answers for it. Okay, so let's respond to the closing proposition that what we just heard right now. Okay, we have the problem that it also affects the kids that are natural, first of all, I think that a lot of them are observers and think it's good that it will affect them because because they can actually prevent other things from happening. But second of all, even if they aren't at fault, we are okay with that. I think they are exaggerating with the impact they are giving us when they are telling us like their attachment style will get hurt and stuff like that. Their attachment style won't get hurt just because their treat got cancelled, the punishments are smaller, and that is the price that we are willing to pay. Okay, so well, I'm going to move on now to the first position. Okay, so we also got for them something similar that will also affect the kids because they will know they will get punishment anyway. Why is it good? Why do you think this punishment will be effective anyway? This thing, the shape, like Shelly explained to you, it's going to really affect the kid. The class will be mad at him, they made them like lose the break, there will be more consequences, and you don't want it to happen again, you don't want to experience this kind of shame again. Second of all, kids will try to stop them and the next time, okay? It's more effective because the kids are actually there when it happens. They are the ones that are always together, so when they're drinking alcohol the next time, the kids are actually there and they know when it happens, so it's easier for them to actually stop it. And third of all, just because it's harsher, like paying a bigger, paying a larger fee. So because the punishment is harder, they will think more before they are doing like this thing they are not supposed to do, because they have more consequences. And the second thing I'm getting from first position that in reality people aren't always supervised, so they will be more willing to do crime or bad things. Okay, so we are teaching kids that even when they aren't supervised, their actions affect others because that's how it is in real life. That's what Shelly explained to you. And also, in reality, you do stay extra hours at work when your coworker doesn't do their when your coworker didn't do its assignment. You do need to stay extra hours. Your actions do have consequences. We also got from them that it's easier for the teachers. Shelly explained to you that it's a great thing that it's easier for the teachers. We think teachers have a really hard time controlling the class, and a lot of kids are participating in problematic behaviors. This way, the teachers will have better control on the class, it will be easier for them, and the students will also be greatly affected with that because they will be able to learn much more effectively. Okay, so now we are going to opening up. So we explained in a more complete way and then how we will actually prepare them for the real world. That's what Shelly explained to you. She showed you that in the real world you do affect other people. Also, we got for them that punishment will be effective because and so there will be motivation for the next time not to do this thing. But they were lacking. They didn't explain why. If the kids don't understand the punishment, why it will be effective. That's where Shelly fills it in, and she explained to you that even if they don't understand, it will still be effective. She explained to you that like with the sharing, because the kids are always there, so they will be able to prevent a lot of things. Yeah, moving on.
Even in the best case of side government, where we are not able to influence the rotten apple as teacher, in our world we still don't harm the good kids who are the only ones that can stop a big-scale crime and also are the most innocent.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, we agree that sometimes even the good kids will get affected. We don't think that, we still think that the effect we are getting for them, for preparing them better for real life and to take more responsibility about themselves is more important than sometimes that sometimes good kids will have to like don't get to go to the school trip or something like that. We are okay with that. It's something we are willing to take. So Okay, so why is preparing you for real life the most important thing in this debate? Okay, it affects you for the long run and for any aspect in your life. Okay, it means that in the workplace, like I explained, if you need to your coworkers, you will affect your coworkers. In your home life, you will affect your family, and in every social interaction, you will affect everyone that's around you and your friends. And that's going to stay with you for years to come. Okay, so the first time that this kid will actually understand, will learn that his actions have consequences on others, will be after school in the cooperative. Kids need, these students need to learn that they are a part of the society and they always have consequences on others. If not, we get people like they don't understand their consequences and don't act accordingly. Like they will make a noise at night and stuff like that. Okay. So we explain to you why the punishment is effective, even if the kids won't understand the punishment. We still think it will be effective because of the shame, because they're always there. We think that life isn't fair, so it's okay that it isn't fair and it's a price we are willing to pay. And we think that the most important thing is prepare you for real life, from this as a cruelty.
Very many clashes in this debate. First is it okay to punish people for others' mistakes? Secondly, will the punishment be effective in deterring kids? And thirdly, is the punishment going to have any, let's call it, effects on the actual education and how these kids operate in real world? But first, let's tackle the whole point about, well, life is unfair, so we should teach them at young age. By this logic, we should also teach them about taxes and take half their sandwich on lunch. We should teach them everything that is unfair about life. No, we want to, when we educate people, we want to grow them as stable humans. We want to grow them as people who understand how they should operate in the world, and we believe that this punishment is exactly what's not giving them the right indication about what's good and bad. So let's get into the first point, the first clash that says, well, basically we need the whole this debate lies under the is it okay to punish people for others' mistakes? OG is assuming that this is true and is telling us, well, we believe that you are part of a group. They don't approve, you are part of the group, you was there, you should have done something, and other than that, they don't give us any explanation. OO is coming in and telling, well, basically, you don't always can influence other people, but let's understand more inherent and deep reasons why this is never the case, and you are never responsible for others' people's action unless it's like murder. So basically, first of all, you can never really influence other people's actions. So everything that OG is telling us, and government says that, well, you was there, you should have done something. You can never really know if you can affect someone, and we believe that the more you are less popular, the more you are less of a strong kid, you have less influence. Not only that, you now feel the obligation that if you don't succeed to convince other kids not to throw food at each other or make noise, you are just hurt by the fact that you cannot influence them and you are a kid and you feel inferior to these kids. Now you add the pressure that if you don't succeed, you will be punished, and you know that you can't do it, so it's all of a more hurt. Moreover, those kids are like government is telling us that basically classes are where everybody is friends and they talk with each other and they do what's right. No, we believe that kids don't really especially the bad influence kids, don't really care about those stuff. They will do it anyway. They will bully and hurt other kids that don't do it. So you as a kid, you're afraid to interfere because you know you might be hurt if there is a fight near you. Like I said, if panels start fighting, I don't know if Gil will probably knock me out in one punch. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be in this thing. But basically, you can't really make someone to be involved in something that they are not the root cause of. Because you can never you don't know if you can influence the other person, and you are really afraid about it. So this is a whole rebuttal to the whole assumptions that governments have that, well, you was there, so you should have done something. So let's go about will this punishment be effective? Because what we hear that basically now people will from governments people will be afraid, so they will peer pressure kids. But first we understood that this is not so true, and this is not okay to put on those little kids the pressure to influence those. But we have a really deep analysis on how psychologically the kids don't really understand it. This is where Gal is going in to tell us about how psychologically kids do not understand the messages. Not even if, like OO is assuming that they are irrational, so they won't see the bad influence kids and they will just blame the teacher immediately. They basically can never understand, kids will never understand what is even if kids are rational and understand who is at blame here, kids will never be able to expect what's coming. They know they can't influence other people. They know they are not to blame, and now they are being punished, or maybe not. Maybe someone else did something. It creates a huge clarity for those kids to understand what's coming. So we believe that if you don't have a direct causality, cause and effect relation between doing something bad to punishment or reward, you create a system that you don't understand what to expect. Therefore, you don't know when you should do something bad. You don't know when you should do something good. So this reason is more why it wins both oppositions, because both governments. Sorry, because first government is first government is telling us, well, you will apply peer pressure on other people, but no, you don't know if you can influence them, and you don't know if it will work, and you don't know if you stop them at an X margin, it will help more. Before I continue opening.
Yes, so you are defending that there are innocent and non-innocent people, and that's why people don't see causality, but bystanders allow actions to happen without, because they're not doing anything about it, and therefore they're giving power to the bully, because bully without supporters doesn't have almost any power.
Okay. So basically we understood that it's not really this simple. You cannot influence other people's action, and we don't know if you could. We don't believe this is just to force kids to do it. We can tell them if you did it, you can have your own reward because you did something good, but we can't punish them because they couldn't influence someone else. It's a double offense. So let's understand why this beats second government as well, because second government is really relying on, well, you will learn for the future, you will be able to you will be able to learn that life is not fair and that you have to take part of society. First, we understood it's not really the case, and you don't need inherently to be to affect other people's choices. But secondly, it causes people to not understand how to act accordingly and not trust the system and be an active participant anyway. So this is why we beat them, and for all of these reasons, I call it a cause.